stars are out, and I'm hearing wolves howling. And I lived with a pack of wolves one summer in Alaska when I was up there doing research, and so like all of these.
You lived with a pack of wolves?
Mm-hmm. So,
how'd you do that?
I was doing research for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and I ran a research camp, a genetics camp from June through September, May through September, whatever. I did it 5 years in a row, and 1 year, a pack of wolves moved into my research camp.
Whoa!
And it was whoa. I mean, whoa. I went fly fishing one night, and I was standing on the bank of a river casting, and it was an eerie little river that I was on. It's pretty quiet, but it had a good flow, and I was waiting for salmon to come up, and I was fly fishing for grayling, and I just kind of had this eerie feeling. I was by myself, and I just had this eerie feeling that I was being watched, and I happened to look behind me, and there's a big alder thicket, right? These bushes that are probably 10 to 12 feet high, have green leaves on them, and these twisted, gnarly, almost like a Boo Radley type tree, like gnarly branches, and I was just staring in the alders, and there's grizzly bears where I was, so I was just trying to mind I'm walking on wolf and grizzly bear tracks as I'm fishing, so I was just staring back in the alders, and it was like a movie. So my eyes were starting to truncate down on the leaves, and then all of a sudden it came to this little opening. I could see a wolf's face staring at me through the alders, and she was probably 10 yards away, something like that.
Whoa.
And so I saw her, and when I looked at her, she was just staring at me, and I just looked back at her, and I just said, hey, I said, hey, Mama, what's going on? And I just kept fishing because I wanted her to know that I knew. And I turned my back on her, and I kept fishing. Well, lo and behold, she comes out on the sandbar with me, and she starts walking down behind me. And it was funny because if I didn't make eye contact, she was totally chill. But if I made eye contact, she would snarl at me. She'd raise her lips up and give a little deep-seated growl. And so she was standing. Now she's probably 3 feet behind me.
What?
Yeah. And so she's right there. She's literally right there. And so I'm just like, hey, Mom, what's going on? I'm just casting my fly rod. And like, when I'm not looking at her, she's kind of trying to check me out. She's doing the whole nose extension, getting a whiff. So she moves off. She moves off down
3 feet?
Mm-hmm. She moves off down.
Do you have a gun on you?
I did have a 12 gauge at that time. I had a 12 gauge slug gun, but I rarely took that thing with me. But I got in trouble actually from one of my bosses because one of the other biologists told my boss, like, he never carries the gun, and we're supposed to carry a gun everywhere we go. And so I'm just like, whatever. But so she left, and
were you worried that she was going to attack you?
No.
Why did she get so close? That seems weird.
I don't know. Yeah, she was just checking me out. She was just checking me out. That's how I was reading into it anyway.
So you think just by the way you were talking to her that she realized that you weren't even interested in being a threat, and she was confident that she could get the fuck away from you?
That's a good question. Yeah, that's a good question.
3 feet?
Yeah.
That's this. That's 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, maybe even 2.5 feet. Like she was right behind me.
That's like you could touch her.
Oh, it gets much better. It gets much better. I ended up spending a whole summer with her and all the other animals in the pack. So the next day, I hear her howl down the river. So I'm just messing around, so I howl back to her. She howls back to me instantly. I howl back to her. All of a sudden, I see her. She's now standing exactly where I was standing the night before. It's all a true story. She's sitting on her butt, sitting upright like you would see a German Shepherd sitting, staring at me. So I give her just a little coy little She lays down, she maintains eye contact with me, and then she's just sitting there staring at me, and then she sits up again, and I howl again, just a little one. She lays down again, she's just maintaining eye contact, then she leaves. That night, so the area of the tundra that I was on is greatly impacted by even human foot traffic. So you have to be really careful where you step because, your footprint will be there for a long time. So we'd walk on these little planks that we made out of 2x4s that would sit up on logs that were, that we put in place. And I had a tent where I slept, and I had a genetics tent where I did all my stuff. And then I had a cook tent, things like that. And so, but right in front of my tent, I had this little platform where I would get dressed in the morning because I would literally live for 5.5 months in a little 2.5 person pup tent. And so I'd get out in the morning and get dressed on this little piece of wood, and then I'd walk to breakfast or whatever, or to the river. In the middle of the night, the alpha male was sitting on my little platform, and he howled right outside my tent.
Dude!
And I sat up, and I grabbed my gun, and I was just sitting there, and he woke me up from a dead sleep. I was just sitting there panting with my gun. I was looking all around, and I didn't know what it was, and then I heard something, and I kind of peeked out, and I saw that it was this big male. I was like, oh, okay, it's just not just a wolf, but like, you know, he's not going to bother me at all. So I hung my gun back up, and or set my gun back down, and I just laid back down. But those two instances just started each day. The next day I come out and I'm walking to the genetics tent and I see him. He's 20 yards away and he's paralleling me on this plank. And I go into the cook tent and then I'm kind of like peeking out the little corners, you know, like I want to, because I don't know what they're doing. I don't want to walk out and get attacked and I don't think they have no body language of hunting whatsoever. And so.
What is their body language of? Curiosity? Like,
curiosity. Yeah. And I hate to
anthropomorphize.
Yeah, but it was just like that movie Never Cry Wolf. That's exactly how the wolves were engaging with me.
What was that movie?
It's just about a researcher, book by Farley Mowat, of a researcher that went up to the Canadian government. They were thinking that wolves were decimating these caribou herds. And so they sent this biologist up there to research the wolves to see how many caribou they were killing. And basically what the biologist found out was that the wolves weren't killing any caribou, 0 caribou. They were killing redback voles, and they were fishing, and they were doing other ways. They were eating small animals, which is basically a very large part of what wolves do. They eat very small animals and occasionally kill caribou, occasionally kill moose, things like that. In certain areas, they can be really hardcore predators. In other areas, they eat a lot of mice. And so... but that's how these wolves were engaging with the actor in this movie. And, you know, they were kind of inquisitive. They were coming around. And so these wolves, they were just always present. Like, even I would go hiking just to get some exercise, and literally 3 or 4 of them would go with me. And they'd hang back like 50, 60 yards behind me. But I'd hike for like 10 miles, and they'd do the whole thing with me and return back to camp with me. And then it started to really grow because we have this research gear that's in the river so that we can count, speciate, and sample the salmon as they swim through to go spawn. But after the salmon spawn, they all die, right? And so they would spawn, die, and they'd come back and they'd wash up on my gear. And so I'd have all these. That's why the wolves were there. They wanted to eat the dead fish that were coming back down. And so as I started to toss fish off on the banks of the river, usually I would just toss them back into the river, but I'd toss them on the banks, the fresher fish. And the wolves started eating them. And then our relationship just kept growing and growing and growing and growing. And I ended up spending like 3.5 months with them.
Did you think while you were doing this that this is probably how human beings and wolves develop this relationship?
100%. 100%.
Wow.
100%. And I feel bad saying this, and I hope I don't offend anybody, but I was working with 2 Inuit guys, 2 Eskimo guys, and they wanted to shoot all these wolves. I kind of lied to them, and I just said, man, like, have you ever seen wolves behave like this? And they said, no. And I said, well, you know, some of your guys' beliefs, you know, fall that your ancestors move on into the animal kingdom, right? And they're like, yeah. And I said, well, is there a chance that some of these wolves could be some of your ancestors, you know? And I know that's not true. At least I think I know that's not true. But they're like, yeah. So I just was trying to convince these guys because they wanted to blast these things. And so I just convinced them not to shoot the wolves. And I feel like an asshole saying it.
Why do you feel like an asshole saying that?
I don't know. I just didn't want them to shoot the wolves. So I just kind of...
It's probably a good way to rationalize it.
I steered them down a path of where their minds may have gone anyway. Yeah.